Imagine walking down a quiet street, minding your own
You
business,
think you can
and
walk away
suddenly a
from me?
uniformed officer
Show me
spits
your
on you.
hands now.
For no reason at all. Your blood boils, your heart races, and the world suddenly feels unfair. But what happens when that same officer later discovers the very man he humiliated is now his boss, the new police chief? The story you are about to hear is shocking, dramatic, and completely unforgettable. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe for more unbelievable stories, and drop a comment below if you think justice sometimes comes in the most unexpected ways. Now let's get into it. It was a typical evening in a bustling American city. Streetlights flickered on, cars passed by with the low hum of engines, and the city carried its usual rhythm of everyday life. Marcus, a composed, middle-aged black man, was walking home from work. He had finished a long day at the community center where he worked tirelessly, helping at-risk youth stay on the right path. Meanwhile, Officer James, a young, arrogant white officer, was patrolling the same street. He had a reputation among his peers for being brash and impulsive, often letting his ego override his judgment. That night, fate set the stage for an encounter that neither man would ever forget. Marcus walked past a small park, lost in his thoughts. Suddenly, he heard footsteps quicken behind him. Before he could react, Officer James confronted him. The tension was immediate. Marcus stopped, hands slightly raised, signaling calm. But Officer James didn't care about context, explanation, or reason. In a shocking display of disrespect, he spat directly on Marcus. Time seemed to freeze. Marcus felt a surge of anger, humiliation, and disbelief. He stared at the officer, his mind racing. Around them, passers-by turned their heads, some whispering, some frozen in shock. Marcus could have reacted impulsively, could have shouted or retaliated, but he knew that reacting in anger would only escalate things. Instead, he stayed calm. He straightened his posture, looked James in the eye, and said with controlled intensity, "You don't even know me. You have no idea who you're messing with." Officer James sneered, clearly expecting Marcus to cower or fight. But Marcus didn't flinch. He continued walking, his dignity intact, leaving James staring after him, confused by the lack of reaction he had anticipated. Over the next few days, Marcus filed a formal complaint. He documented everything: his own calm demeanor, witness accounts, security camera footage, and the blatant abuse of authority. While Marcus sought accountability, he did so without bitterness, hoping the system would correct the wrong. Little did James know, his life was about to take a turn he never expected. 2 months later, a citywide promotion came for the police department. Officers were evaluated on performance, community engagement, and leadership potential. The department was in need of a new chief, a role that required not only experience but also the ability to lead with integrity and fairness. Marcus, already respected in the community for his leadership, problem-solving skills, and unwavering moral compass, was quietly nominated. With endorsements from city officials, community leaders, and civic organizations, he rose quickly through the ranks. Then came the announcement. Marcus was appointed as the new police chief of the city. Word spread fast. Within the department, whispers circulated. Officers who had long underestimated Marcus suddenly realized his rise was unstoppable. Among them was Officer James. When he received the official notice, his reaction was a mixture of disbelief, panic, and anger. The very man he had spat on, the one he had humiliated, on a quiet street was now his superior. James felt the sting of irony. Every interaction, every misjudgment he had made suddenly came into sharp focus. He had underestimated Marcus, had acted recklessly, and now faced the consequences of his own arrogance. Marcus, now the chief, was aware of the history but did not act out of revenge. Instead, he used the opportunity to demonstrate leadership and integrity. He called a department meeting, addressing all officers, including James. "Respect is earned, not assumed," Marcus said firmly, his voice carrying authority. "Every person in this city deserves to be treated with dignity. That includes you, every officer, every citizen. Mistakes happen, but how we respond defines our character." The room was silent. Officers exchanged glances. James felt a wave of shame and reflection. He had expected retaliation, anger, or public humiliation, but Marcus's approach was calm, strategic, and morally superior. Over the following weeks, Marcus implemented reforms, focusing on accountability, community engagement, and fairness within the department. Officers who had once acted impulsively began to see the benefits of measured, respectful leadership. James, in particular, underwent a transformation. He attended training, engaged with community outreach, and began to understand the weight of his actions. Yet the story of that day on the street, James spitting on Marcus, never left the minds of those who witnessed it. It became a turning point, a cautionary tale, and ultimately a lesson in humility, power, and justice. Marcus's rise to chief was not about vengeance. It was about proving that true authority comes from respect, intelligence, and moral courage, not fear or aggression. And in an unexpected twist of fate, the very man who had sought to demean him now learned firsthand the value of integrity, patience, and accountability. By the time the city celebrated Marcus's first month as chief, stories of his calm, strategic, and fair approach had spread across media outlets. Community members applauded his leadership. Officers respected his decisions, and the tale of the white officer who spat, then faced his new chief, became a symbol of justice and poetic irony. Weeks passed, and the department slowly adjusted to Marcus's leadership. Officers who had been skeptical were beginning to see his unique approach, calm, strategic, and unwaveringly fair. But for James, every day felt like a battle between ego, fear, and the realization that he had been utterly outclassed. Marcus made it clear that past misdeeds would not go unnoticed, not through vengeance but through accountability. James, who had always relied on bravado, found himself under scrutiny. Every report he filed, every interaction he had with citizens, and even his off-duty conduct was carefully reviewed. The tension within the department was palpable. Officers whispered in hallways, gossiping about the man who had risen so quickly, and the officer who had humiliated him only to now serve under him. The irony was impossible to ignore. James tried to maintain his composure, attending community outreach programs, leadership meetings, and training sessions. Yet internally, he wrestled with guilt and disbelief. The very man he had disrespected, Marcus, demonstrated leadership qualities James had never even considered. Calm under pressure, articulate, and consistently fair, Marcus was everything James was not. Meanwhile, Marcus initiated a citywide initiative to strengthen police-community relations. Officers were paired with local organizations, attending public meetings, mentoring programs, and events that connected law enforcement with the very citizens they served. Marcus led by example, and James, along with others, was required to participate. The first community meeting was tense. Citizens remembered the previous incidents involving police misconduct, and murmurs of doubt filled the room. James sat silently, aware that his past behavior had contributed to the community's distrust. Marcus began the session with a clear message: accountability, fairness, and respect would guide the department. As Marcus addressed the room, highlighting his plans for transparency and engagement, James felt the weight of his own misdeeds. The community's eyes, once skeptical, now studied him. Marcus's calm, unwavering presence made James realized the magnitude of what he had done and what he had to change. Days turned into weeks, and the city slowly began noticing positive change. Social media posts praising Marcus's initiatives went viral. Stories of officers, including James, engaging positively with neighborhoods began surfacing online. The narrative shifted. Marcus had transformed not only the department but the perception of law enforcement itself. James struggled privately. The humiliation he experienced at the hands of Marcus was not physical, but moral and psychological. Every order, every directive, reminded him that Marcus held authority, but did so with intelligence, fairness, and dignity. The man James had tried to demean had become a symbol of justice and leadership. Marcus, aware of James's internal conflict, decided to turn the tension into a teaching moment. He invited James to lead a community outreach session with him. Initially hesitant, James reluctantly agreed. The session was intense. Community members asked hard questions, and James was forced to confront the consequences of arrogance, disrespect, and prejudice. Marcus guided the conversation, allowing James to participate but ensuring accountability remained central. By the end of the session, James had not only faced the community's skepticism, but had begun to grasp the depth of Marcus's approach: leadership through fairness and moral courage. This experience marked a turning point. James began documenting his own growth, learning to engage citizens respectfully and reflecting on his previous missteps. The department noticed a gradual change in him, and the community slowly started to extend a cautious trust. Meanwhile, the media picked up the story. Headlines highlighted the dramatic twist. Officer who disrespected. New police chief learns the value of accountability. The story went viral, inspiring nationwide discussions about respect, leadership, and the power of moral authority. Marcus's approach continued to emphasize strategy over confrontation. Officers like James learned that power is most effective when combined with humility, patience, and intelligence. Marcus transformed what could have been a toxic situation into an opportunity for growth, not just for James, but for the entire department. By the end of Part 2, the tension remained, but it had shifted from confrontation to introspection. James had learned the first lessons of humility, respect, and leadership under Marcus's guidance. The city watched, the department evolved, and Marcus's legacy as a transformative leader began to take shape. And yet everyone knew the story was far from over. New challenges, unexpected tests of character, and opportunities for redemption were on the horizon. The next chapter promised even more drama, suspense, and lessons in leadership and justice. The city had begun paying attention. News outlets caught wind of the story. A man publicly humiliated by a police officer is now the city's police chief. Social media exploded with debates, memes, and heated commentary. Citizens from all walks of life were discussing accountability, leadership, and justice. Officer James felt the pressure like never before. Every tweet, every article, every comment online reminded him of his misstep. He walked through the precinct with a growing sense of dread. The story wasn't just a lesson for him, it was now a public spectacle. Marcus, however, remained composed. He understood the power of optics and public perception. Every public appearance, community meeting, and media interview was carefully crafted to demonstrate calm, fairness, and leadership. The contrast between him and James became stark. Where Marcus exuded confidence and moral authority, James was visibly anxious, uncertain, and defensive. One morning, Marcus organized a press conference. The local news covered it live. Cameras flashed as citizens and reporters gathered outside City Hall. James was forced to attend, standing at the back, watching as Marcus addressed the crowd. Leadership isn't about fear or aggression, Marcus said firmly. It's about integrity, accountability, and respect for every citizen. Mistakes happen, but we learn and grow from them. Our city deserves transparency, fairness, and justice every day. The crowd applauded. Journalists scribbled notes, capturing every word. The story of the officer who spat and now serves under his victim became the central focus. For James, the humiliation of that street encounter had transformed into an ongoing public reckoning. Over the next weeks, Marcus introduced reforms aimed at building trust. Body cams were enforced rigorously, community patrols were enhanced, and officers were encouraged to engage with residents directly. The city's community centers hosted workshops led by Marcus himself, teaching leadership, conflict resolution, and accountability. James was assigned to assist Marcus in these initiatives. It was his chance to redeem himself, but every interaction felt like a test. He began to understand the real weight of leadership, the patience required, the moral responsibility, and the need to see beyond personal ego. During one community event, a former witness of the original incident approached James. The tension was thick. The crowd watched as he hesitated. Then, in a rare moment of humility, he apologized publicly, acknowledging his past mistakes. The gesture, though small, signaled a turning point in both James's journey and the city's perception of the police force. Marcus observed silently, allowing James to take accountability while guiding the discussion to broader lessons about respect and fairness. Citizens cheered, cameras captured the raw emotion, and social media amplified the moment globally. Yet, not everyone was satisfied. A few critics continued to challenge Marcus's reforms, questioning whether true change was possible. James, still grappling with his own growth, faced these critics head-on, speaking about lessons learned, accountability, and his commitment to improvement. The department noticed the shift. Officers who had once ignored Marcus's initiatives began participating actively. The story of a public humiliation turned lesson in leadership became a model for training, mentorship, and community engagement. James had changed. No longer brash or impulsive, he now understood that true power isn't enforced. Through intimidation, it's earned. Through respect, competence, and moral courage. Marcus had turned what could have been a personal vendetta into a broader lesson for an entire city. As the media coverage intensified, Marcus and James appeared on local television shows, podcasts, and community panels. Each appearance reinforced the story's central theme: accountability, respect, and transformation. Viewers were captivated by the narrative, which combined drama, suspense, and moral justice in a real-life context. By the end of Part 3, the public saga had reached its peak. Officer James was no longer the arrogant man who spat on a citizen. He was now part of a transformed police force, working under the guidance of Marcus, a man who had turned humiliation into leadership and injustice into a nationwide lesson. And while tension remained, it was now the tension of growth, accountability, and moral reflection, not anger or confrontation. Marcus had proven that calm, strategic, and ethical leadership could reshape perceptions, reform systems, and even redeem those who had once erred. Weeks of tension had built to a crescendo. Officer James, once arrogant and dismissive, had undergone rigorous training, community engagement, and leadership mentorship under Marcus's guidance. But the shadow of their first encounter, the spit, the humiliation, still lingered. Every officer, every citizen, and every journalist who had covered the story was aware that the final chapter was near. Marcus, as the new police chief, prepared a citywide event designed to demonstrate accountability, transformation, and transparency. Citizens, media, and department officers were invited to witness the first public reflection and recognition ceremony, a symbolic moment for justice and change. James approached the venue with mixed emotions. He felt nervous, remorseful, but also determined to prove that he had learned the lessons Marcus had instilled in him. He knew the eyes of the city, the media, and his peers were on him. Every step, every gesture mattered. The event began with Marcus speaking from the podium. His calm, confident presence radiated authority and integrity. Leadership, he began, is not about revenge. It's about accountability, fairness, and growth. Every person here has the capacity to change, and every moment offers the opportunity to do the right thing. He then called Officer James to the stage. The crowd murmured. Cameras zoomed in. Social media live streams exploded with anticipation. James, feeling both apprehensive and humbled, stepped forward. Marcus continued, "This man made mistakes, but he has worked hard to learn, to reflect, and to grow. Today, he demonstrates what it means to take responsibility." James took a deep breath. He addressed the crowd, acknowledging his past actions. "I failed to show respect. I allowed arrogance and ignorance to guide my behavior. I humbly apologize to Marcus, the citizens of this city, and to anyone who witnessed my actions. I've learned, and I am committed to doing better every day." The audience erupted in applause. Citizens, once skeptical, now witnessed the power of accountability and redemption. Social media amplified the moment, with hashtags trending nationwide. Justice served, leadership, redemption, accountability. But Marcus wasn't done. He unveiled a new initiative, a mentorship and community integration program designed to ensure that every officer in the department, especially those who had previously acted recklessly, could learn from experiences like James's. The program emphasized respect, ethical decision-making, and community engagement. James, visibly moved, realized the irony. The very man he had disrespected, Marcus, had turned his humiliation into an opportunity for growth, not only for him, but for the entire police department. The lesson was clear. True power comes from integrity, strategy, and moral courage, not fear or aggression. The event concluded with Marcus shaking James's hand in front of the crowd. It was a simple gesture, but it carried monumental significance. Cameras captured it from every angle, citizens cheered, and reporters called it a story of justice, redemption, and unexpected leadership. Later that day, Marcus and James walked through the city streets together. Citizens approached them, offering congratulations, expressing admiration, and sharing how the story inspired them to stand up for fairness in their own lives. Marcus had not only reshaped the department, but also influenced the community positively. James reflected quietly. The man he had once humiliated was now his mentor, leader, and role model. Every decision Marcus made demonstrated wisdom, patience, and moral authority. The irony of the situation was no longer humiliating, it was transformative. The tension had shifted entirely. What began as confrontation and public disgrace had evolved into mentorship, community trust, and departmental transformation. Marcus's leadership style, calm, strategic, and morally grounded, had reshaped not just the lives of the officers but also the perception of law enforcement within the city. The climax of the story wasn't about punishment. It was about growth, redemption, and the profound impact of integrity. Marcus had turned a moment of personal injustice into a nationwide lesson in accountability, leadership, and the power of doing what's right. And as the sun set over the city, Officer James knew that his journey was far from over. But for the first time, he walked with confidence, humility, and a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that true change, however ironic or unexpected, could transform not only one life but an entire community. Marcus's influence extended beyond the walls of the police department. Community programs he initiated flourished, connecting citizens and law enforcement in ways the city had never seen before. Schools, community centers, and civic organizations collaborated with the department to promote mentorship, conflict resolution, and civic engagement. Officer James, once arrogant and dismissive, had fully transformed. He now led community outreach programs, mentoring new officers on ethical behavior, accountability, and respectful interactions with citizens. The city began to recognize his journey from humiliation to growth as a powerful example of redemption. Media outlets highlighted the story as an inspiring case of leadership and justice. Podcasts, YouTube channels, and news articles discussed Marcus's approach, emphasizing calm, strategic, and morally grounded leadership. The viral nature of the story inspired other departments across the country to adopt similar reforms. Marcus's focus on mentorship, fairness, and accountability had created a ripple effect. Officers who had previously been indifferent or reckless now followed his model of integrity and respect. Citizens reported a noticeable improvement in interactions with law enforcement, and trust slowly returned to the community. The department hosted a citywide award ceremony to honor officers and community members who contributed to these changes. James stood alongside Marcus, reflecting on his journey. The once humiliated officer now embodied the lessons of accountability, patience, and growth. The applause from citizens, media, and colleagues was both humbling and gratifying. Marcus, aware of the lasting impact of his leadership, continued to implement reforms, balancing authority with empathy. He introduced regular training sessions, workshops, and community forums to ensure that the principles of respect, fairness, and accountability remained central to the department's mission. Over time, the story of the initial confrontation, the spit, the humiliation, the irony of Marcus becoming chief became a legend in the city. Citizens retold it not as a tale of vengeance, but as a story of transformation, leadership, and justice prevailing against arrogance and misconduct. James often reflected on the moment he had underestimated Marcus. The encounter that once seemed insignificant had shaped his career, his values, and his understanding of true leadership. He realized that humility, reflection, and accountability were far more powerful than force, ego, or intimidation. The city embraced the transformation. Community trust in law enforcement increased, crime resolution improved, and a new culture of ethical policing emerged. Marcus's story became a blueprint for other cities, facing similar challenges. A reminder that leadership, grounded in morality, strategy, and integrity, could produce extraordinary outcomes. Marcus continued to engage with the public, attending forums, mentoring youth, and supporting officers in their personal growth. His calm authority and dedication to justice had created a legacy that extended far beyond any single policy or initiative. The tension of the story had fully resolved. The officer who had spat on Marcus had learned invaluable lessons in humility and accountability. The department had transformed. The city had embraced a new culture of trust, and Marcus had demonstrated that true leadership is measured not by power, but by impact, respect, and moral courage. The story concluded with a simple but powerful message. Injustice can be overcome. Mistakes can be transformed into growth. And true leadership comes not from fear, but from integrity. and the courage to do what is right. As the sun set over the city, Marcus looked out across the streets he had vowed to protect. Citizens walked freely, officers acted responsibly, and the sense of hope and trust was palpable. A single moment of confrontation had sparked a movement of transformation, proving that one person acting with dignity and wisdom could indeed change the world around them. And while the story of Marcus and Officer James would be told for years to come, the lessons it carried were universal. Courage, patience, humility, and integrity always leave a lasting impact on individuals, communities, and society as a whole.